No, it's not my job to intro. It's my job to answer questions.
You intro all of these videos.
No, I don't like it. Every time I do it,
this.
he makes fun of me for, oh, you're too excited. You're too calm. So you fucking Ask Max intro fuckface. 4 questions, 4-minute timer, rapid fire in the last 4 minutes. Bam.
All right, question 1. Brian Adam, I have the easiest job. I got to warm up for it. Brian E. Adamson asked, how are you as a leader, Max, maintaining the vibe and chemistry of the team as they all work together? What steps are you taking to manage each of their own psych for the betterment of the team while still allowing them to express some of the individuality?
All right. I got to start this. All right. I got a lot of trains of thoughts on the question, first of all. So the first is, it's only week 1 of training, and there's a bunch of new people here this year. So there's no real maintaining the chemistry of the group, because the group dynamic is going to be evolving for the next year and hopefully multiple years to come. So there's no real maintenance of the dynamic or chemistry of the group because it's just in its infancy. The second is the structure is that each athlete has their own individual coach to prescribe individual training sessions around their individual priorities, and then the group trains together 5 sessions a week. The individuals are a little bit different and have a little bit of a different schedule. The individuals meaning Travis and Noah. But on Monday, we do cyclical work. On Tuesday, we do swim work. On Wednesday, we do barbell cycling work. On Friday, we do speed and change of direction work. And on Saturday, we do CrossFit. And those sessions run through for all of the people that are on the teams. And we make adjustments as, like, if somebody has a background in football, for example, they might not be at all of the speed and change of directions because it's a lower level priority for them. Or Joey's a really good swimmer and swam in the past, so he's not going to be at all the swim sessions, so he could work on some of his own individual stuff. And then the coach helps manage health, psyche, individual training results, giving accessory work on any of the things that they weren't good at relative to the group, so that the group continually can rise together. So that's what we're doing to maintain the group and individual hybrid structure where people can get better as individuals, but the group can also get better. But the real thought process I had there is what people, or in the question, the reference to as the leader. And this isn't really like an exercise or like an attempt at me being humble, but I really don't believe that what people refer to as leadership is what I think of as leadership. I have a job to do for the business or for the training community or for my athletes, and I do that job. But with each individual task that the business has, there is somebody that is optimally suited to take the lead in that role. So if I have scientific questions, I'll go to Evan. If I have questions about barbell cycling, or if I have questions about athletic performance on game day, I might look to Noah or Travis to give me insight into what they do on a day-to-day basis. So I think of leadership as a group dynamic process where there's constant leaders that are holding people accountable, and that the culture itself is made up of a bunch of people that all have their specific skill sets that they lead the group in. I don't really think it's my job to control the psyche per se of any individual, especially not all the individuals. I think if I tried to do that, this would turn into a dictatorship. I would get everybody stuck in my own train of thought, as opposed to coming up with their own unique expressions of how they want to do things on a day-to-day basis. So for me, the things that I have to do as a leader is I got to manage all the business stuff, the cash flows, the investments, what we do from a technical perspective. I got to coach my athletes. I got to train because I'm a physical representation of all of my ideas. I got to continue to read so that I can continue to stay on top of research and new ideas. And I got to coach my athletes really well. And then if there's other business opportunities, I need to be creative and come up with new processes. So as a leader, that's what I do. But I don't really consider that leadership. I think the group in and of itself is comprised of a bunch of leaders that all have different roles.
You can't look at the screen.
No.
I probably had more thoughts and would have got stuck.
No, it's really good.
You put it here.
Well, turn it around. That's cheating.
Fine.
Because I was ready to call you out.
All right. I'll do
you
that.
don't want him to see it at all. Okay.
All right.
I will not give you facial expressions.
Yeah, there's no...
I don't want to see 2 clocks, though. Turn it like... Just pull it down once you've started it. There we go.
All right. Cool. You ready for the next question?
Did you have something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, 2 things. One, I mean, we just finished our first week of team training, and so far we don't hate each other yet, so it's a good start.
Yeah.
But also, too, I think it was important the expectations that you set in the front end, like saying, like, this is what I expect from everyone, so that we all are on the same page. And it's not necessarily on you to only keep us accountable as the leader. Everyone's keeping themselves accountable. So
Yeah.
We're kind of all taking our own leadership roles.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I set like, hey, these are the things I think we need to do to set ourselves up for winning. And if you don't do them, we all lose. Like, it's not like, training think tank loses and it's all on Max. It's like you guys are going to be on the competition floor eating that loss also. So for me, it's not something I worry about. I think competitive athletes are going to figure it out.
This past week felt like training school. Like, show up to class, you know?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a blast.
Hold on, let me get over there. All right.
All right, next question. You ready?
Yeah.
From Brian Fink, Max, what are the major training differences when you're coaching a client for long-term health and wellness versus performance? Mainly, what are movements that you have people do and movements you want people to stay away from generally?
Okay.
Good luck this time, asshole.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to crush this. So, first of all, I don't really coach people that differently. I think the way that most people classify general health in the market is that they're giving an appropriate amount of movement, sweating, and breathing to maintain fitness. But I think there's no real such thing as the maintenance of fitness. You're either putting a stressor on the system that is stressful enough to create an adaptation in a forward direction, or you're not stressing the system and there's going to be a regression in capacity. So with a health client, if somebody comes to me and I say, what are the things that you want to do physically that you think are proxies for how you define health? And that's different for each individual. Some people in their definition of health think that being able to squat snatch is something that is important for their definition. They either, from a social perspective, they want to take part in classes that have that as a movement. There's something psychological that makes them feel strong by doing something that's fast and heavy spinal loading. There's, a million other reasons somebody could snatch. If I looked at somebody that was in their 50s and wasn't doing something competitive, like personally, I might say, well, like, do you really need to do this? And if their answer is yes, that's their prerogative. It's their definition of health. So I treat my health clients and my performance clients exactly the same. Say, what do you want to get better at physically? Or what are the physical issues you're dealing with that you perceive to make you, quote unquote, unhealthy? Are you having trouble with your body image, your current body fat levels, your ability to move in certain patterns pain-free, your ability to express power in certain patterns, your ability to do day-to-day activities without worrying about hurting yourself? Or are you dealing with chronic tension, anxiety? Like, what are the symptoms that we're looking at? And I try to come up with some sort of a hypothesis as to why that's taking place. And I create a training program to improve all of those specific capacities. It's the exact same process I take with competitive high-level athletes. And it kind of circles into Greg Glassman's a quote or whatever he says, that the training needs for a different demographic. I don't remember the exact quote. It's so bad, but basically he's saying that the training needs are exactly the same for older people and younger people. They just vary by degree. So you're not going to go as hard with somebody super old. You might go at a different level. And I agree with that. I think there are, you should push cardiorespiratory fitness in a certain level. You should push movement quality to be better. You should push spinal stabilization to be better. The methods that I use and the level and the loading parameters are the things that change from a performance athlete to a general health client. But there are people that I have that just want to be generally healthy and still want double body weight back squats. And I'm okay doing that. I just tell them there might be a cost associated with that. You might hurt yourself and at some point change your mind. But I think they're pretty similar.
Cool. 20 seconds left. Nice job. Cool. Would you say as well, like it's the timeline's different too? So with how you would push someone that has a performance goal that is an athlete versus someone who has a performance goal that, is a general health client, timeline is a little different. You could say, I can get you there by this point for that competition, but long term, like we could slow it down and you could get there. It just might take longer.
Yeah, I mean, really, athletics is really just a time pressure, like standard that you set on a certain group of performance parameters. Whatever, so you just say like, okay, you're gonna run a mile for time, but you got to do it on this date, or you're got to be prepared for the open. It starts on this date. Right. But if somebody just said, I want to be prepared for the open, we could just take our time. The stress of that training would be way lower because you could just slowly and incrementally add stress until somebody's requisite level of movement was like, oh, you could do this in super high reps and not be stressed out.
Yeah.
But if you want to be an athlete, you just don't have that luxury. You have to be ready and you have to find compensations to go faster. So it's inherently more stressful, but you can still be a health and performance client at the same time without falling under the athletic umbrella with like trying to perform at a certain time, right? It's like, hey, I want to improve my 10-minute assault bike time trial, but I don't care when I do it or when in the year. I might just pick a day that feels good and do it. Versus an athlete, it's like, hey, we're doing a 10-minute assault bike time trial next Tuesday with all the athletes, and you got to perform. That is, to me, the ultimate stress of an athlete, but that's different than just being a performance client.
Cool. All right, ready for the next one?
I am.
Kay Zomerlai asked, hey TTT, is there still a mix of individual programming and group programming, or do all athletes work through the same programmed workouts? Thanks.
And this is in reference to the group training, right?
Yeah, this is in reference to the group training together. So I guess I kind of answered that in question one. That would be poor preparation on my part because I picked these questions out to talk about. But
God, imagine if he's doing this for Ask Max. Could you imagine what the programs for his athletes look like?
So the way that I guess the best thing to do would be to talk through my thought process about why I structured it that way, since they already know what we're doing. We have 5 individual workouts that are guided by a coach, or 5 team workouts that are guided by a coach every day of the week, and then the second session per day, or third in some of the individuals' cases, is written by the individual coach. So the thought process I had when I laid it out is the best team is the group of individuals with the highest level of individual performance capabilities and all of the skills of CrossFit, and the best communication, camaraderie, emotional investment in the team, like all the things that come with actually being with somebody while you're suffering, which you can't really get at an individual level. So I thought the individual model is not going to work optimally because people aren't going to go as hard as when they're competing against somebody as good as them. It's not going to work because they're not going to really be as tangibly connected to the concepts of training think tank and what we stand for and how much we're investing into them. And the group model of just hammering everybody is probably going to escalate the level of the highest people and totally burn out and destroy the people that just aren't as good. And I wanted to create an environment that was conducive to growth for people on the entire performance spectrum that we have here. Because we have people that are obviously 4-time games athletes competing with people that are younger and newer in the sport. Like, you just put them into a stressful scenario. The 4-time games athletes, they have better coping strategies for dealing with psychological stress, with pain, with the acidity, with heat. They've experienced like, oh, this is a type of stress that I shouldn't push through. They know how to have those regulatory mechanisms. So The younger athletes can learn from observing that, but if they were in that environment all the time, they wouldn't know when to push and pull, and I think it would get overly competitive. We actually literally just right before this discussion had a talk about some research that I had read in the past about gorillas in the wild fighting, and the one that escalated in the dominance hierarchy as a result of winning actually experienced less biochemical, I don't remember exactly how they measured it, but I think it was biochemical stress in their internal chemistry, like cortisol, testosterone markers, whatever they're taking in the animals. The stress was lessened on their system as a result of their raising in the dominance hierarchy. So if you create a group of savage athletes like that, my hypothesis was the best of the best will feel better about themselves all the time because they're winning and getting better.
Outcome, yeah,
and everybody else is just getting the shit kicked out of them, and they might not get better. So I thought it was really important to create that split system where there's a blend of like, hey, we're just doing things for fun and you can learn from the best people here. We're doing some teamwork together that's not super competitive and it's technically focused, so you can work on skills. That was technically can work on skills, movement, quality, and capacities, can learn about the human body. And then we have our days where we come in and we just get after it. So again, that didn't really answer the question because I had already answered the question, but that was my justification for creating that hybrid I should have just stopped. I fucking should have seen Chris's face getting excited for his win. Is that the first public victory against me?
I think so.
That might be the first time I've ever lost, period, in my life.
Right. We're not counting all the workouts we've done.
Yeah. Should I say that I'm 5-0 against Brandy on this?
Oh yeah.
Too late now?
That would be great. That would be great for me later on.
Yeah, I got punched in the stomach by one of my athletes today.
I taught her how to do that.
That's how we roll. People probably think it's so serious here.
It is. It's very serious. All right, man. Next question. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. From Lions Daniel asked.
By the way, I shouldn't train hard before I do these because I'm sweating and I'm having such a hard time speaking.
My legs are shaking as I'm standing here from earlier. All right, from Lions Daniel asked, how many times throughout the year and how far in between do you test your athletes' performance markers? For example, anaerobic speed reserve, VO2 max, lactate threshold, etc. What is the time frame, expected weeks, months, years for your top-level athletes to make significant improvements in these categories?
Okay. So
4 minutes.
Yeah, man. I got a lot of things, and trying to get them all out into one cohesive thought is difficult. So the first thought that I have is the performance metrics that he listed there, while potentially valid in certain endurance communities or certain research, are not the performance metrics that I use with athletes. And I think it's one of the major problems I see with either scientists or specific technical coaches, like a weightlifting coach or a running coach or a swimming coach, getting into coach sport. The sport of CrossFit has its own performance metrics that you have to look at. And some of them are valuable, like looking at some sort of a physiological test every 2 years, or looking at some of the physiological assessments that we do with Evan are really valuable to guide training. But if I were thinking that getting them better at a physiological test, like improving their VO2, is going to transfer to them improving their ability in the sport of CrossFit, I think you'd just be really mistaken. There's a varied number of contraction patterns. There's a varied amount of metabolic systems that get challenged. There's a varied amount of ways that you can put them together into actual tests. There's a varied number of tests per day that you do at each level of the sport. So being good at the Open is different than being good at regionals, is different than being good at the games. And so having performance metrics that are tied to old research or old research models that were generally improving either cyclical endurance markers or maximal levels of strength or power is not going to target what we're looking at in CrossFit. So in CrossFit, I have different performance metrics that I'm looking at with my athletes. I do take regular blood work on them or tell them to get regular blood work to make sure that health is like something that they're thinking about. But I'm not sending them to a physiologist to get a VO2 max test every year. I don't think that would be conducive to progress. So instead, we look at, okay, they entered a competition. This was statistically lower than everything else in the field. Okay, let's create a varied number of tests that target this. Like, let's say muscle ups, for example, with Travis has been something over the last year that has gotten tested that was far off of where he needed to be relative to his competitive peer group. So we took the actual tests. Oh, you got me. Oh, shit. The actual tests, the strict variation, like 20 strict muscle ups for time, an AMRAP unbroken set, muscle ups after doing ski ergs, the actual tests that he failed at, and I'll look at those performance tests. Now, I have to choose so many with somebody at that high of a level to avoid pattern overload or just burnout, because real athletes put so much pressure on themselves to get better. So having just the same test over and over and over and over again isn't good. So having the ability to create variation in the testing body will allow you to test frequently enough with your athletes that they can get better. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you got 30 seconds. I'll let you
Okay,
finish.
well, how frequently you do that is dependent upon the level of the athlete. So beginner athletes can just test a lot more frequently. Advanced athletes, you got to kind of spread it out, time it for confidence leading into a competition, and it's just kind of an art form at that point.
Gotcha.
I think I had another thought about that one specifically, but I forgot. I think it was near the end of the question. Do you want to just get to it even though my time is up?
Sure.
Yeah, I wanted to add on variation a note, why it's also important is because obviously you can't ignore, a test that he was lacking in or an athlete was lacking in, the muscle ups.
Yeah.
But being careful about how specific you make it to the test that was failed, because it may never show up again.
Yeah.
So I think maybe looking at what the actual individual limitation was, and then that's where you add the variation so that you can kind of cover bases so that if it shows up in another form.
Yeah. What was the end of that question? Oh, shit.
What is the time frame expected for your top level athletes to make significant improvements in these categories?
Okay, I did actually answer that then. All right, cool.
This
We got
guy's
to
just
it.
trying to brag.
Oh, I just wanted to show you how successful I was.
That was 4, right? That was 4 questions?
yeah.
Okay, so we do rapid fire for another 4 minutes?
Yep.
That was 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was number 4.
Sniggity snap.
All right. I'll start with the rapid fire from the top.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, start.
All right. Now you're good.
No, remember for rapid fire, you start after the question. Come on, guys, act like you've done this.
Don't we do it
We
different
like to
every
make
time?
sure that we don't have consistency here.
Yeah.
Constantly varied,
What if
right?
we do it different every time, I think? All right. We are going now, or
No, I stopped it. I'm waiting.
All right.
I'm waiting for the question.
From PV Land asked, for CrossFitter looking to perform at local comps, what's more important, volume or intensity, or a balance? Should one do that third WOD in a session even though intensity will be lower?
Oh, man. I feel like I should answer this one for 4 straight minutes.
It depends.
Yeah. Well, yes, it depends. Well, it depends, first of all, on the athlete. Like, what are the athletic needs? And in order to define the athletic needs, you need to define the competition. So a local competition like Wadapalooza for somebody that lives in South Florida has a completely different profile than a one-day competition with 3 tests in it. So I'm assuming if somebody is saying a local competition, that there's going to be a one-day, say 3 tests, if that's what he referred to, where one is going to be very simple in body weight because they're generally equipment limited. So running and body weight, burpees, box jumps, double unders, that type of stuff. Strength test, because again, they're usually, if it's in a day, in order to get a lot of people in, the heat times have to be short. So a long run can send off everybody at once and keep the time window condensed. A max strength test can keep the time window condensed because it's just a short amount of time, and then 1 Metcon. So intensity would be more important for somebody that lacked on the the strength test and the Metcon, or the strength components of the Metcon, and volume might be more important for somebody that can't tolerate the long thing or the recovery between the 3 events. So it really, really, really depends on whatever the athletic needs are and whatever the athletic tests are. So you have to go through some sort of assessment process with your own fitness and figure out what you need to train, and then you can get an answer to that question. But without knowing what you need to train, I'd just be making it up. I don't think volume or intensity is more important. I think volume serves a purpose for certain adaptations, and intensity serves purpose for other adaptations. From a health perspective, just jumping in and doing that 3rd Metcon at the end of the day, like, I don't think you should ever mindlessly just do something to accumulate volume. You should have a purpose for all of your training, and if you don't, that's an entirely different, I guess, topic.
Is ice cream a good purpose?
Yeah, having ice cream is good.
All right. That was a long answer. Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
El Judino asked, why Normatec? Why it over other options, muscle stem, etc.? This should be answered because it's a short... Oh, you wrote that, your note.
No, I didn't.
This should be answered because it's a short question.
Yeah, that was him.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
I thought you wrote a note in there that said that.
No.
Well, he's telling you to answer
Yeah,
the
why
question.
Normatec? I'm assuming they mean because it's on our
Yeah.
Facebook thing. I don't prefer Normatec to other recovery units. Normatec reached out, and we found a mutual beneficial relationship where they sent some units here, and some of our athletes really like it. So we got them.
Yep.
Some use it, some don't.
Feels great.
Yeah.
You just sit there and do nothing.
Yeah, so I don't have a preference on any of them. I think they all work, and they all serve a purpose for certain people.
Cool. Next question from Stephen Caserta asked, how would you program hypertrophy training for a CrossFit athlete?
I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, like, unless the athlete specifically is going to benefit from putting mass on in a specific area of their body, a true athlete should make all of the adaptations to their system conducive to performance in the sport that they've chosen. And CrossFit is not a figure competition or a body composition competition. I've really tried to hammer that home to certain athletes that I think have serious body image issues and can confuse the fact that some of the best in the world look good with looking good being a requirement to be one of the best in the world. And I think there are certain people that want to be good at CrossFit that I will do body composition training for, but I will not call them CrossFit athletes. If you want to be a CrossFit athlete... Well, hold on. These ones, it doesn't matter if I get cut off.
The memory card has 3 minutes. Let's just...
All right.
Shout out to Steven, by the way.
Yeah. What's up, Steven?
Did you want to say
you know
anything
who
else?
that is?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Mitch knows him.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess really I lost my train of thought, but the truth is an athlete just shouldn't be making body compositional changes just for the sake of appearing a certain way. If the body compositional changes will create statistical progress in their performance metrics, I'm all about them. So if you've measured that being at sub 10% body fat does in fact improve your muscle up capacity, your ability to sustain in 20-minute or 30-minute rows, ability to sustain in toes to bar and grip endurance and like all the things that are getting tested in your specific body of tests, then I'm all about making those changes. But every time I talk to one of those people, they're just saying, well, this is what I should be doing, but they have no data. And a lot of the data that I have on athletes is I have people that put on body weight and put on a little body fat coming from an aesthetic background and improve performance metrics that you would think from a physics perspective would make them worse at them. But that's probably the biochemical influence and the hormonal influence of just being properly fed. So it's not like...
Okay. But if you were going to prescribe some hypertrophy training, what would you do?
Yeah. I honestly, I would prescribe hypertrophy training, not CrossFit. I would give them bodybuilding protocols that were effective. There are some things you can do in the gym with a barbell or with dumbbells that are really effective. And there's a million protocols, 6, 12, 24s, 10 by 10s. But certain athletes will hypertrophy from really heavy loading and certain will
Yeah, it's hard to say
from-
hypertrophy training is this rep range only.
Yeah,
We've
you
learned
gotta
that's not always
you
the
gotta
case.
test people and see what creates growth in the muscle cell and what creates fat loss for that specific athlete. But I find most people, it has nothing to do with their training. It has to do with the fact that they never sleep. Their movement quality is shit, so it makes just their aesthetic profile look weird from a symmetrical standpoint, and they eat poorly. So I would focus on that. If they have that dialed in, then you can start playing around with protocols. So I hope that kind of
How
helps.
much time we got left?
20 seconds, go.
From Andreas Anstrom asked, pricing. What are your thoughts on this when it comes to individual programming? General thoughts depending on how much work you do.
Ask that in the next one, and I'll try to get to it.
10 seconds.
All right. Yeah, that's all I got.
Cool.
There's no
What's your
way.
middle name?
David.
David's lame.
That's my middle name.
Is it?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No.
Yes, it is.
No.
Yes, it is.